What we've been talking about up until this point is considered connective tissue proper. Areolar connective tissue, um, adipose tissue, and reticular tissue, along with your dense regular and dense irregular connective tissue. Those are all types of connective tissue proper. Next, we're going to turn to cartilage. And there's three types of cartilage we will discuss. Cartilage, all cartilages have in common is that they are avascular. Remember, the term avascular means without, that A there means without vascularity, without blood vessels. In addition, cartilage has no nerves. It is made 80% of water. In this case, there is going to be a great deal of ground substance, many of those GAGs we discussed, collagen fibers, and elastin. The idea that cartilage is avascular has implications for repairability. Your body cannot repair its own cartilage injuries. There is no means to do it. So I want you to keep in mind that when you see the word avascular, it has a few implications, and one of them is that if it's a tissue such as a connective tissue and it does not have a great deal of support structure around it, then it is not going to be able to repair itself. All right, so our first and most common type of cartilage is the hyaline cartilage. It is most of the time when you come across cartilage, most cartilages are going to be hyaline cartilage. There's the spelling right there. There's the description there. Just kind of take a look at the picture here. You'll be able to see these structures that are called chondrocytes. Chondro is a root that means pertaining to cartilage, and CYTE means cell. So chondrocytes are cartilage-based cells, and they're inside of these structures that are called lacunae. Lacunae is a term that means tiny lake. So we have these lakes, what are basically just cavities set up. The chondrocytes reside within there. And then most of what you see here, around here, is going to be your collagen fibers. Hyaline cartilage is found, let me find this down here. Hyaline cartilage is actually what we call embryonic bone tissue. Before you have full-fledged long bones, you will have cartilage first. So cartilage makes up the matrix of the bones before they are even bones. Cartilage is also found, I think the place where it's oftentimes thought of as being found are what we call the costal cartilages. So costal cartilages are a type of hyaline cartilage. Try to keep that in mind. That may be helpful. It's not specifically flexible, but it does have maybe a little bit more give than a bone. But in fact, the cartilage has quite a lot in common with bone material. Again, most of the cartilages in your body are hyaline cartilage with just a few exceptions. So the costal cartilages are the most common type. And then there's also structures called articular cartilages, which allow for bones to be next to each other without actually touching. So you have this cartilage kind of on the ends of your bones where they might articulate in order to protect them from each other. That is also a type of hyaline cartilage. And there's a couple of other areas in your body as well. Okay, our next type of cartilage is called elastic cartilage. This is probably what you think of when you think of cartilage because it's super flexible, super strong, and it's in a place where you know it to be. So, for example, the external ear, the pinna of the ear, it is very strong, plenty of cartilage, plenty of collagen. It's also, of course, very flexible, as the name suggests. It has lots of elastic fibers. These elastic fibers tend to stain rather darkly. Again, it has chondrocytes inside of lacunae. So it's strong, but very flexible. But elastic cartilage is only found in a few places in your body. The external ear being one, the epiglottis being another. The epiglottis is basically just superior to your larynx and allows for the choice of whether you're going to swallow food or breathe air, basically flaps back and forth, so flexible and strong. And the last type of cartilage, which is actually the strongest, is called fibrocartilage. Again, we have lots of collagen. You'll notice this time the collagen is staining blue, but you can still see kind of like that sinusoidal wave of the collagen in here. We have a chondrocyte inside of a lacuna. So all cartilages have those chondrocytes. The places where you'll find fibrocartilage are places that are very um, subject to a lot of stress. For example, if you've heard of the menisci of the knees, a meniscus of a knee is literally holding up your body inside of your knee, and they are oftentimes injured during sports injuries. So they're rather famous. So those are made of fibrocartilage. Another place that you find fibrocartilage are in these intervertebral discs. The root inter means in between the vertebra. There are these thick pads of fibrocartilage there. So they tend to really resist compression. Think of your entire body sitting down on your knee, like pressing down on your knee. These pads resist compression. The intervertebral discs of your spine resist compression. So the other thing is that what makes them so strong is it tends to have, I know you can't really see it in this picture, but it tends to have the lacunae lined up in a row, and then several rows of collagen, and then another row of lacunae with chondrocytes set up, and then lots of collagen fibers all in a row. So something about the makeup of that particular configuration of collagen versus chondrocytes makes it particularly resilient. So rows of chondrocytes alternate with rows of thick collagen fibers. Okay, our third category, so our first two categories, remember, of connective tissue. The first category was connective tissue proper. The second category was cartilage. The third category is its own thing. It is bone. And here's a picture of bone looking like tree trunks in there. I'm not sure how much your instructor will suggest that you need to know about this. So I'll just kind of show you the picture here. We have osteocytes in this case. Osteocyte, you notice the chondrocyte for cartilage has now changed to osteocyte for bone. You see that root CYTE, which means cells. Osteo pertains to pertaining to bone. We'll talk a lot more about bone tissue in our lecture as well, like more specifically about bone tissue, and we talk about that. There's two different types of bone, compact bone and cancellous or spongy bone. All right, and our fourth category of connective tissue is blood, believe it or not, our only liquid tissue that we'll be discussing. Inside of blood, the matrix in this case, there is a matrix. The matrix is your blood plasma. It's a little bit different, but it still has a lot of the characteristics of the matrix of other things. It still has a lot of the fluids and fibers and so on inside of there. It's just a little bit less traditional than you think of other connective tissues. You'll notice, of course, that blood has a great deal of cells. These cells are called red blood cells, which are not actually traditionally cells, believe it or not. So the red blood cells or the erythrocytes are the most common ones seen here. And then kind of these blue dots in between here, these are going to be white blood cells. And oftentimes you'll see little spots, which are platelets, kind of mired in between here. And of course, we'll talk about blood plenty down the line too. Blood has its own chapter.